Somebody in your life has quietly decided that you're a little too comfortable being alone. Maybe they said it as a joke. Maybe they said it as concern. Either way, it landed, and some part of you started wondering if they were right. If the quiet you love is actually something broken in you. Here's what psychology says instead. For certain kinds of minds, solitude isn't a symptom. It's a signal. And if you do these 6 things alone, on purpose, without anyone asking you to, your brain may be operating in a way that's far rarer than you think. Picture a Saturday afternoon. Everyone you know is somewhere loud. And you're in a quiet corner. Your apartment, a park bench, maybe just your parked car. Thinking, not about anything urgent, just letting your mind move at its own pace. And then a small voice asks, should I feel bad about this? That voice isn't yours, by the way. It was installed. Years of being told that social equals happy. That solitude is what you settle for, never what you choose. So let's take that voice apart. One habit at a time. The first one. You think through problems alone before asking anyone. Most people's instinct is to text someone immediately, collect opinions, get a reaction, borrow certainty. Yours is to sit with it. Turn it over. Get frustrated, cool down, look again. Psychologists call the result an internal locus of control, the quiet belief that your own reasoning is worth trusting. And it's rare, because most of us are wired to outsource cognitive discomfort. Someone else's take always feels lighter than your own uncertainty. But every time you sit with the problem, you're building something. You're learning to think, without a safety net. Second, you process your emotions alone, quietly. Now, this is not the same as shutting down. And you already know the difference in yourself. One person goes silent because they're avoiding the feeling. The other goes silent because they're finally doing the work. Sitting with it, asking honest questions, feeling the thing fully, instead of performing it for an audience. Researchers call what you develop emotional granularity, the ability to name exactly what you're feeling. Not bad, not off, the precise texture of it. And that precision predicts better regulation, better relationships, better mental health. Most people never build it because they never sit still long enough to feel anything clearly. Third, you have solo rituals that nobody knows about. A walk you take the same way every week. A playlist that's only ever played when you're alone. 10 minutes of silence before the day starts. Nobody assigned you those. Nobody's watching. You just started, and they stuck. That's self-authorship. You're actively building your own inner world, instead of waiting for the outside world to hand you one. Most people need noise to feel okay. You learned how to generate your own signal. And that's not a small thing. That's psychological independence, and it's genuinely uncommon. And here's the painful part. A lot of people who do exactly this feel guilty about it. They've been told, sometimes directly, usually not, that preferring solitude means they're cold, closed off, too much in their own head. So some of them stop. They force themselves into rooms that don't fit. They perform an extroversion they don't feel. They shrink their inner life just to look more normal. And what gets lost is hard to get back. The relationship with your own mind. The ability to be alone without it feeling like a punishment. Fourth, you make the big decisions without needing a consensus. You'll gather information. You'll listen to people you respect. But when it actually matters, the job, the move, the relationship, you go somewhere quiet and you decide. You don't need 5 people to sign off before it feels real. Social psychology has spent decades documenting how hard humans get pulled toward the group, especially under uncertainty. When we don't know, we copy. But you've learned to separate input from instruction. Other people's opinions are data. They are not your answer. Fifth, you enjoy your own company, and you don't feel the need to explain it. Not tolerate. Enjoy. Because there's a version of being alone that feels like exile, where you're alone and wishing you weren't. And then there's the version you know, where the quiet isn't empty. It's full. That's self-companionship. And it turns out to be one of the strongest predictors of long-term well-being we have. Not money, not achievement, not even relationships. The ability to be alone and still feel whole. Sixth, and this one is the most telling. You reflect on your own behavior without anyone asking. Late at night, after a conversation that sat wrong. Why did I react like that? What was I actually feeling? What would I do differently? Nobody assigned that homework. There's no consequence forcing it. Most people only reflect when something breaks, when they get called out, when it finally costs them. You do it preemptively, quietly, on your own time. And that is a fundamentally different relationship with yourself. And your brain is not idle while any of this is happening. Not even close. When you stop feeding it input, a system called the default mode network switches on. It's the network involved in autobiographical memory, future planning, creativity, and stitching new experiences into a coherent sense of who you are. In plain language, when you go quiet, your mind starts doing some of its most important work. It's just work that nobody can see from the outside. That's also why your best ideas never show up in a loud brainstorming session. Researchers call it incubation. The brain keeps solving a problem, even after your conscious attention has walked away from it. It's why the answer arrives in the shower, on a walk, in the 10 minutes before sleep. A conversation from last week suddenly clicks into a book you read years ago. A childhood memory suddenly explains a habit you have now. Those connections almost never happen in a room full of stimulation. They need space, and solitude is the space. Then there's your relationship with boredom. Most people treat it like an emergency. The second silence appears, they reach for the phone. But you've probably noticed something they haven't. If you stay with boredom long enough, it changes. The discomfort turns into curiosity. Questions show up. Ideas start assembling themselves. What you're building in those minutes is cognitive spaciousness, the mental room that only exists when your attention isn't being pulled in 9 directions. And in a world built on notifications, that room is disappearing. There's one more advantage, one nobody talks about. You become much harder to manipulate. When someone has no internal relationship with themselves, they need the outside world to tell them how they're doing. Praise lifts them. Criticism levels them. Their whole emotional weather depends on other people. But self-determination theory found something consistent. People driven by internal motivation recover faster, persist longer, stay steadier under pressure. Praise still feels good to you. It just doesn't define you. Criticism still stings. It just doesn't erase you. You've also gotten comfortable not knowing things. And that's rarer than it sounds. Most people panic when certainty disappears. They want a label, a conclusion, an answer today. But you've learned that some questions take years to become clear, and forcing an early answer usually just gives you the wrong one. Studies on cognitive flexibility keep finding the same thing. People who can sit with ambiguity solve problems better because they haven't locked themselves into one rigid story. That's not indecision. That's intellectual maturity. So here's what I want to leave you with. None of this is loud. Nobody hands you a trophy for thinking deeply on a Tuesday night, or for processing a hard emotion without an audience. But character is built in private. Resilience is built in private. Self-awareness is built in private. And years from now, people will call you calm, or grounded, or wise. And they'll have no idea where it came from. It came from the quiet. Because the rarest intelligence isn't the loudest in the room. It's the one that learned to grow in silence, long before the world ever noticed. And if you saw yourself in these 6 habits, there's a second pattern that almost always comes with them. One that explains why other people's emotions land in your body before you've even had time to think. I'll show you that one next.